cannot defy your brain.
G'day.
Well, Morry, here we are, up to mischief again.
Huey. I've always known you only as Dr. Michael Hewitt-Gleeson.
No, you haven't. No, it's been great. About 20 years we've known each other, hasn't it?
20 years. We first met in St Kilda, Melbourne, when
Yes.
I was learning about your writing of Wombat sales.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And was introduced to you as a keynote speaker that I was looking at bringing over to China.
Which you did.
We did. And it was just in time too. It was, I think,
That was 2000, I think.
2007.
Was it 2007? Okay.
Yeah, 2007.
Right.
And you taught me everything about GBB and
Yes.
and CVS-to-BVS.
Yes.
So important because about 6 months to 12 months later, the global financial crisis hit.
Oh, wow, yes.
And I had to take an organization that had 80 staff and 5 offices and had a market that had a very fine profit margin.
Right.
And I had to completely change the business model.
Goodness me.
And I was able to do that thanks to the chaperoning, I like to call, of taking you from Shanghai to Beijing and Shanghai again.
Yes, we did. Oh, it was fantastic. You turned on a terrific program. You filled the room with your clients and others. And I just had a new book out, the X10 Meanplex, and so it was a terrific tour for me. I'd been to China, but that was my first sort of tour, business tour, thanks to you. It's a pity that for everyone, that the global financial crisis hit because you were really on a roll then. Well,
In fact, it was great for our business.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah. No, I didn't fail. In fact, I prospered. So again, the way that I looked at it with the BVS, CVS-to-BVS.
Current view of the situation to better view of the situation.
Absolutely. Just kept my chin up. And I looked around the country actually, and saw that, everyone was in the doldrums, the pure doldrums of like no wind in their sails.
Yes.
No one was willing to do any meetings or sign new contracts. And I thought, this is a great opportunity. Now, I did have to fire 60% of my team. So it wasn't good for everyone.
No.
But then we came out of it in March 2009. We came up with Spark 09, and it was an innovation conference.
Oh, wow.
And it was in the Shanghai World Financial Center, which, for anyone who knows the skyline of Shanghai,
yes,
at that time it was the tallest building, 2009. Right. It's the one that looks like a bottle opener.
Oh, yes.
Yes. A square one. Japanese owned and built, and
Is that across the river? Is it?
Yes, it's in Pudong,
Yeah.
The business area of Pudong, and we ran a business conference called Spark 09 that brought together the 4 categories of HEBS, HEBS, humanities, environment, business, and science.
Oh.
And we had Microsoft was there, IDEO, which is an ideas innovation company. Arup is the architectural firm that built the Sydney Opera House.
Oh,
yeah, so some big names and then some smaller names, some charities that were working in the area. There was one I enjoyed where he was doing micropayments to pig farmers. Sounds like an insult, doesn't it? Your family gives micropayments to pig farmers. That was one of the speakers. Anyway, the point was I was able to rebirth out of the phoenix out of the fire.
That's turning. Well, what we're going to be talking about in this series, is thinking, and one of the main purposes of thinking is to turn situations which face us in life of all the different kinds, from what they are into something better. Yeah. Whether it's a solution to a problem or a challenge, or the taking up of an opportunity that might be there but requires, the wit and the dopamine and the energy to actually take up the opportunity. So spot on. That's a great story to start with.
Yeah, there we go. And today we're talking about the brain, specifically brain coaching.
Yeah, I'm at the stage of my career a brain coach. I've been doing a lot of coaching specifically with elite sports people in the last 3 or 4 years. Everyone from, all the different codes of football, Australian rules, men and women's, rugby, soccer, so on here in the United States and in the UK, through an organisation that is bringing these groups together. And I talk about the brain game. And I've worked a lot with coaches. And I was one of the groups last year that had a coach from the Green Bay Packers, an American football team.
American football, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I asked him, how many people do you have in your coaching squad? He said 30.
Gee whiz.
So I said, well, how many brain coaches do you have in your squad? And he said, well, zip.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah.
None. He said, oh, we have a sports psychologist. Well, that's excellent, of course, but not enough. Not the same thing. Psychology has been around 100 years, and there's overlap, of course, and it's important. But neuroscience is only really, it's all happened in the last 10, 15 years. A lot of it hasn't even trickled down into school textbooks yet. And this is cutting edge stuff. And if you're an elite sporting team, whether it's an Aussie Rules football club or whatever, you don't want gym equipment from 30 years ago. You've got to make sure that, and I was recently did some work for Hawthorn Football Club and went down to their amazing community centre there in Melbourne. And, there's banks and banks of computers, people, working online. There's, the gym equipment, the absolute latest stuff. And I'm sure all the other clubs have that too.
Yeah.
So the same with neuroscience. 90% of the academic papers written in neuroscience have only happened in the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, right.
Prior to that, it's medieval. So so I've been pushing that with, and I guess my opening story for this series, Morry, would be just before Christmas, I was invited by the Australian Institute of Sport to spend a day with the 20 top Australian Olympic coaches of the 20 sports.
Yep.
That was down at a golf course in the Yarra Valley. And I took them through a full program for brain coaching, and they then graduated as the first, Olympic coaching team in the world to actually be qualified brain coaches.
Right.
No coach that I've ever spoken to has ever said, there's no such thing as the brain game. It's not a good idea. They're also absolutely important, yet nothing is done about it.
Yeah.
So, and of course, it's the same in business and the same elsewhere. So that's going to be what we'll talk a lot about in this series, the value of the brain game, the value of having tools and strategies and algorithms and so on, and then what can be done about it. And we'll be supplying this as well. Yeah,
well, I mean, you have a look at games like Australian rules football in particular, where the game can go from 40 points up to being 40 points down in a couple of minutes, and sometimes it's the energy that from the crowd that you can see sort of lift the players up if they just happen to get a goal out of nowhere, and suddenly it's almost like everyone's floating on the field, isn't it? And bam, 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 then a team wins.
And that's not happening in the body per se with muscles and bones and that obviously they're involved, but that's all driven by the brain.
Yeah.
And then the brain and then the connecting wires that go down into the muscles and all the other things. So so the brain can, and you don't have to be a neuroscientist, but just learning a few basic things about the brain. If you ask the average person how many lobes are there in their brain, they wouldn't know. And yet, why shouldn't you? Why should you know more about your thumb than you do about your brain, which controls pretty much everything in your life, what's going to happen? So we'll be looking into some of this in this series, and it is a lot of fun as well.
Well, just because everyone must be asking themselves or Googling it right now, how many lobes are there in the brain?
Well, let me ask you, how many lobes are there in the brain?
I'm thinking there's like a left and right lobe, but there's also the cerebellum at the back, and then there's one underneath that.
Yes, yeah.
So I would say 4?
There are 4.
Oh, okay. All right.
There are 4. There's the one at the front.
Oh, frontal lobe, yes.
The frontal lobe, and then there's the one on the side called the temporal lobe, near where your temple is.
Yeah.
And then there's the parietal lobe and the occipital lobe. So there's 4, but there's 2 hemispheres.
That's right.
So 4 multiplied by 2 is 8, but the standard, in the examination, the answer would be 4.
4, right.
Now, whatever, no big deal, but that's not rocket science. You can learn that in a minute. Everyone knows it now. But why weren't we taught that at school? So one of the things what we've been trying to do now is to get neuroscience taught in primary schools.
Okay.
Because why should a kid go to school for 2, 3, 4, 5 years and not really learn anything about their brain? I mean, what other thing that you would be learning there would be more useful and more important? No. So we're trying to get that, and we've got our first school in Tassie ready to kick off.
Right.
So we'll go from there.
I have to say it. If you're doing the school in Tassie, then of course it's 4 lobes times 2 heads, so it is 8. Sorry, Tasmania. Look, you set that up.
Is that going to survive post-production?
I think so. I just want to add, since I originally met you 20 years ago, and today I've been in the comedy industry. So
yes, you have.
For the audience, there may be a little bit of, I have to apologise. I'm ahead of time.
You don't need to apologise, and I'll tell you why. As you know, I started out my career with Edward de Bono, who was obviously famous for his concept of lateral thinking and so on. And I did the first PhD in lateral thinking under him. And he said that there is no more significant feature of the human brain than humour. Mm. Humour is the most significant feature of the human brain. One of the reasons is because 2 patterns that weren't really connected before connect up for the first time. Yep. And so you get an insight, a new pathway, but there's other aspects as well.
Well, that's right.
So even though humour is not as popular these days as it was, and some people even refer them to dad's jokes, which seems a little unfair, we've still got a sense of humour, so let's go for it.
Well, that's right. And I think just coming back to the CVS-to-BVS, the current view of the situation to the better view of the situation, that is, in a way, joke structure, because we haven't thought about the better view of the situation, so we laugh and or just smile because we hear the better view of the situation, a new perspective.
And if it's temporary, it's a joke. It's something. You get the punchline, you go, aha, I see it, and then that's it. But if it's permanent, it's called insight.
Ah, yes.
A whole new way of looking at the world.
That's right.
And insight in business, in science,
in
relationships, in parenting, clearly in sport and the arts and so on.
That's
be able to switch from one insight to a better insight. The earth is not flat, it's round. So that's important. So you might say that humour is is temporary insight, and insight is permanent humour. So really important.
There we go. Yeah. Oh, right. But take notes.
We're on a roll.
That is incredible. So you talked about psychology and psychologists, and talked about the brain game and how you came on board. And there's a new group of people out there now qualified to talk about the brain game. What would be if we were to compare just general psychology, as you said, from 100 years to today, and brain game, which is more around 10 years?
Yeah, because it's science.
It's science, yeah. What would be a good comparison between the two?
Okay, well, let's go from the medieval concept. I mean, let's say there's 2 theories of the brain currently that we could be familiar with. One is a medieval theory. It's called the Cartesian theory, Descartes, I think, therefore I am. And it's the mind-body theory. And it's the idea that there's a mind and there's a body. And so you're left with the impression, I tell my brain what to do.
Uh-huh.
In neuroscience, where we've been able to look inside the head with incredible technology and find that there is nothing inside the head but neurons.
Yeah.
Neurons and neurotransmitters, but there's no little secret compartment there called the mind that's sort of telling the brain what to do. And so in neuroscience, it's no, my brain tells me what to do.
Yeah.
Now, they're 2 entirely different ways of looking at the world. I mean, it's like a flat or a round earth. If you think the earth is flat, that controls the way you behave. Mm-hmm. You don't sail too far out from shore because you might fall off the edge and so on. It's not that it isn't useful. It's quite useful, and people use that for hundreds of years. But if you're able to change your point of view or your understanding to the earth is round, then you can take a left turn, sail further out, and Columbus discovered half the world in 30 days. So how you view the world, how you understand the world, what your perception is the main thing, that has a huge impact on your behaviour. Yeah. So that's just one example of the difference. They're both useful and they do overlap, but it's a completely different history and body of thought. And I say most of psychology, some may disagree, I suppose, but would come from the Freudian stuff from 100 years ago. Yeah. That's still pretty big, has its value, but that wouldn't be the way neuroscientists would go about things at all. Yeah. So what we are saying is, by all means, have sports psychologists because that's very useful. Just the same way in your medical team, you would have physiotherapists, but you would also have doctors and you'd also have other people that specialise in that. So a professional sporting team deserves to have in its 30 coaches at least one neuroscientist, one brain coach.
Which leads me into X10.
Yes.
And I came across X10. I think it was in Wombat Selling.
It was at the time we went to China.
Yeah.
My X10 book had just come out, that orange one.
That's right.
I gave it to you then.
So I read all of them. Can't remember which one it found it, but X10. And I do recall whether you said it to me in the line waiting to get on China Eastern, which if you recall, we missed the flight.
Yes, we did.
Because we were too busy talking and yapping that when we got up to the counter, the lady said, "Oh, that flight left 5 minutes ago." And we're like, "Oh, well, we'll just get the next one." And we got the next one and thankfully didn't cost us anything. But X10 is, I recall, it involved a company, General Electric.
General Electric, yes.
General Electric.
GE.
And I recall it was there was a moment, I think it was New York, was it? Yes. General Electric. And the CEO, the manager, Jack Welch, famous CEO, he had problems where he was flying all over the world in his private jet, the company jet.
In his fleet of jets.
Fleet of jets, of course. And he was exhausted. And the problem was that when he wanted to meet to Japan, he had to go because they wanted to meet the CEO. Yes. And they went to Australia, he had to go because they wanted to meet the CEO. And I recall the X10, I don't know if this was born from this problem that you were involved with.
Right.
But I understand that he created a whole second level below him with the title of CEO.
Well,
was that
spot on? Just a slight variation. So I was doing some work for Jack Welch and GE at the time. Yep. I'd been booked by my agent. I was based in New York. Booked by my agent to go and do a gig. And this was a big GE meeting in Marco Island, Florida. Yep. And I wrote up on the whiteboard GE X10 because that was what I was teaching at the time in my formula, which we'll get to. The CVS. Current view of the situation multiplied by 10 equals the BVS.
The BVS,
so that's my E equals MC squared formula.
Okay.
CVS multiplied by 10 equals BVS. So anyway, I was doing that and teaching that. And the new chairman, Jack Welch, was sitting in the front row.
Yeah.
And as it turned out to be Jack Welch, we now know who he is and whatever. But he leapt up onto the platform when I'd finished. And he said, this is what he used to start it, but he was actually a very good speaker, but he'd start with a bit of study. He said, we need to reach, we need to grasp, we need to go for the BVS.
Yep.
And he changed the GE's mission statement, and companies had mission statements in those days, to the road to the BVS or BVS. And then he said to me, where are you? How are you getting back to New York? I said, I've got my ticket. He said, no, come back with me. So that meant going out to the local airport.
Yep.
And he had a Gulfstream, and there were 2 Learjets of other executives that were traveling with him. So when I said before a fleet, he did actually travel with at least 3 planes going together. So I mean, this is the 80s, flashback. But I'm sitting in the plane going back to New York with him, eating lobster and French champagne. But we're talking about how can I put this in the company. And so I spent the next 3 or 4 years doing a lot of work for them, going around the whole organization and teaching CVS-to-BVS, X10 thinking. And then we had that session one morning early in the piece, and he said, I can't get any work done just as you outlined because I'm the chairman, CEO, president, they call them in America.
President, yep.
He said everyone's got the president of General Motors has to talk to the president of GE, General Electric, and blah, 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 as you outlined. So he said, and I'm just drinking my tea, I hadn't said a word, he'd already learnt X10. He said, if only I could multiply myself by 10, which of course you can't, but the value of this kind of thinking, it often serves as a provocation or a stepping stone to something that you can do. He said, I know. And he had all the various divisions of GE, aerospace, healthcare, and so on. They were all vice presidents. And he said, I'll call them presidents.
Yes.
And so he changed the name of the vice presidents to presidents, and now a president can talk to another president. Now, that idea by itself, wasn't enough to multiply GE by 10, but that kind of thinking and getting it as he did down through the management of his organization led to, he did multiply GE by 10. It became, at that time, the most valuable company in the world.
Incredible. A rose by any other name would smell so sweet. And he created a whole bunch more roses. That's just by changing the name.
And changing his thinking.
Yeah. That's great. I have a bit of a philosophy. When I go and work with organizations, I tend to tinker versus completely modify the direction. And I have a 3% concept, and when I talk to the board and CEO that I consult, I'll say, look, I'm only tinkering with 3%, but 3% over here in sales and 3% here in operations and 3% here in marketing adds up to a lot over time. So,
and if you look at trajectories, look at it. If you're looking, say, at a sales chart, a trajectory, and assuming that it is actually going in a positive direction, a 3% shift now, as that extends out on a different trajectory in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years, the gap is significantly more than 3%.
Yeah,
and that's what we do with X10 thinking.
Yeah,
we're looking at the possibility of being X10 in the future.
Yep.
But to get that kind of thinking, it might only be 1 or 2% today. So we're certainly on the same wavelength.
That's great. Earlier I talked about the conference Spark 09, and it was in a top venue. The building itself was called the Shanghai World Financial Center. And financial center during the financial crisis. So it was really bad timing, bad naming. Again, a bad name arose by any other name. And so it was perfect timing. I put my BVS hat on, and everyone else would have said, they're not going to give you this venue for free. And I said, I reckon they might, because I reckon they're desperate. They've just opened up.
Yes.
I'm going to ask them anyway.
Yes.
And I walked up and I asked them, and I didn't get it for free, but I got it. I got this building for an entire day. It was one day.
Yes.
It was 2 days, I think. And it worked out to be $8,000 total.
Wow.
Yeah. For the space, the tech, everything. Even the water bottles were included.
Yes.
So it was nothing. And then another BVS was where we didn't have much money because no one was buying corporate training from the company at the time, but we did have this magazine called Network HR, and it was.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I think I featured.
You were definitely in that. They were definitely in that, and they must be worth a ton because I can't find the physical magazine out there. And I said, well, how are we going to produce a brochure for the actual event? And then it dawned on me, I don't need to create a separate brochure. I'll put it within Network HR magazine, but I'll do the Japanese style where. I'll start from one side instead. So the magazine opens up and you start reading it. Halfway through the magazine, the words are all upside down.
Upside down, I see. Yes.
And then you flip it, and the back page is actually the front page of the brochure of the conference. So again, this came from chatting with you outside the box and better view of the situation. And again,
and how did that go?
It went really well. I think there was about 100, 120 participants there, and they paid money to attend, which was great. The goal was to rebrand ourselves because we needed to move away from what we were known as into a more high-end version of what we are. And you couldn't get more high-end than the tallest and newest building in Shanghai.
Yeah, I remember it when I was there.
Amazing.
Because Pudong across the river, that was just really taking off, wasn't it? Back then. And now, of course, it's
the Jin Mao building and that one, and there's a couple more that I haven't seen with my own eyes yet.
Yes.
I haven't been back enough.
Should we take a moment to just explain, since we've referred to it quite a bit, about CVS-to-BVS, just give a little explanation, perhaps transfer that to listeners so that they can actually use it as a software for their brain or an algorithm or a heuristic. So it comes from a fundamental rule of neuroscience. Well, let's say the first law of neuroscience is this: you cannot defy your brain. And we can unpack that as we go through the series, but that's quite a statement, isn't it? You cannot defy your brain. Your brain is the boss. It's right now, it's my brain that's telling me what to do and what to say and how to be in this situation with you. It's not like me over here somewhere telling my brain, but that's fine. You cannot defy your brain. And another thing is no arrangement in the brain can ever be the best possible arrangement of information, if we go into maybe later on, but how the neurons work and with their 100 billion neurons each of us have, with 6,000 or 7,000 connecting wires, which means gives us trillions of connections and so on. You can imagine the mathematical combinations of all those. So that's why people don't remember things exactly the way they were and so on. No thought, no arrangement of information can be the best possible one. Now, what is useful about that is in the medieval concept, the medieval brain software was right and wrong. It was the church, that invented global education, which is an amazing gift to the world. In those days, it was just a nobleman or a priest or perhaps a wealthy merchant who could have tutors and have education and educate their children.
Sure.
And the Vatican was sort of running things at the time, and it had a belief that everyone had a soul.
Mm-hmm.
So using that concept, they said, well, everyone's got a soul, a peasant, various levels of society as they were then. Everyone is really entitled to be educated. That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
And so they, of course, had their priests who were missionaries spread around the world. Today we might call them influencers. But and it invented this global education system, which it spread right through Europe and around the world into Australia 200 years ago with rabbits and a few other things. And even today we still send our kids to school, giving the impression that you have to get the right answer and don't make any mistakes.
Right.
Because the fundamental software, the right-wrong system, that binary black-white, gay, straight, men, women, up, down, flip-flop binary system, which is very useful, was there were fresh translations of the Greeks, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, and so on, discovered by Thomas Aquinas at that time, and he was the great sort of doctor of the church, and he used that as the basic software. So this information, this rather education enterprise, amazing, spread around the world, but embedded in it was the right-wrong system. So we all become very, very good at judging. I'm right, you're wrong, let me tell you why. Even our parliament, I mean, I won't recommend it because if you watch it, it's lifetime, you'll never get back. But if you do watch Question Time on Parliament, you'll see all the people on this side say, we are right, and nothing you say makes any sense. Now, these are adults. And well-meaning adults, teachers, lawyers, business people, and so on. And then you have people on the other side. No, we are right. And nothing you say makes any sense. And out of that clash is meant to come a safe and a productive future. And it just doesn't and can't and hasn't. So we do need a software upgrade. So basically, people who are going to school and being taught the right-wrong system, it's 2,500 years old.
Right.
So if we look at our iPhones or our smartphones or our laptops and so on, if we didn't upgrade our software even in the last 5 years, we'd be pretty out of it.
No, that's right.
So we need to upgrade our brain software from 2,500 years old, I'm right, you're wrong, to some other options. And the one that we teach is CVS-to-BVS. There's a current view of the situation. Whatever your brain is giving you at this moment,
that's right.
That's your current view of the situation. Perfectly valid. Since after all, that is the way you see the world.
That's right.
So there's no point telling you you're wrong because, you're sitting there seeing the world the way you see it. But it can never be the best possible arrangement in the brain. So if we train our brain with software, CVS, and then the one we use is if you multiply your CVS by 10, that's just to give you, it's not right, it's a tool, and that's X10 thinking. So CVS, X10 multiplied by 10 equals BVS. Current view of the situation multiplied by 10. And once you practice that and it gets in your brain as a software, it does the sort of thing you've described before, how you've used it in practical life. Your brain is constantly giving you CVSs, so you don't have to worry about getting CVSs. That's what your brain gives you at any particular moment. You can choose to X10 it, to look, to search, and we have search engines now, and AI, of course. Other people, we have our partners, we have our colleagues, we have our parents and our children and our enemies and our customers and so on, all have different CVSs, so there's no shortage of finding CVSs, and then we search for a BVS, something that could be even 10 times better. And as you practice this and get good at it, then you put it into practice just the way you have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the challenge is often, I often say to myself, this is user error. This is user error. I'm trying to do something. I'm trying to write, might be updating a website using a bit of HTML. Or today I was putting a light bulb into the front indicator of my vehicle that had blown. And, you had to kind of reach around the back of the front of the car, put it down a little bit of a gap, slide it in. It's German, so they did their best. And then there's a knob there that you turn, and then it came out really easy. And then I put the new bulb in. could I get it back in?
Oh,
and I kept going, this is stupid. And I felt my blood pressure rise. And then I said to myself, user error. I've got a current view of the situation. I'm repeating the same thing. I'm putting it in this way.
Yes.
I'm putting it in this way. I'm going to shift my, maybe not 10 times, but certainly 2 or 3 times. And I just came at the problem from a different angle, a literal different angle.
Yes.
And it went in and I turned it and it worked.
Yeah.
But the most important thing, it was the ability that I had to question my current view of the situation.
Okay, great.
And I don't think a lot of people do that.
No, they don't, because they're taught at school with many, many, many hours.
Yeah.
And not only at school, on social media. I mean, social media is very, very negative, very, very judgmental. And it's like even like a theatre critic. A theatre critic, we all have the right to criticise and to judge, but what we just need to remember is what you're judging, you're not judging the situation, you're judging your understanding of the situation. So when a critic judges a play or a theatre or a recipe or anything, sure, but from their point of view, they're judging, therefore, their understanding of it, which is not the same thing as the reality itself. So there's many, many, many opportunities there. Your ability to, after having a few goes, to say, wait a minute, let me X10, try CVS-to-BVS, error. And in science, we call that an experiment.
Right.
And so, and a real experiment, not like marketing experiments where people do things because they think they'll make more money on it. It's fine. But a real experiment is when you do something not because you know what will happen, but in order to see what will happen.
Yeah.
And therefore, most of the time, they fail. But of course, you learn from the failure and you roll that over into your next experiment. So the key there is to do 10 experiments rather than 1 experiment. And here right now, I could give a useful tip in using AI, ChatGPT or Claude or, whatever you're using. People are still just using them as glorified search engines.
Right.
And they can do much, much more than that.
Yep.
But it all comes down to the quality of your prompting. And we'll be looking at this in further episodes. When you ask ChatGPT for something, blah, 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 here's my problem, please give me a solution. Don't ask for 1 solution, ask for 10 solutions. And then choose the ones you like out of the 10. The brain is very good at reacting. So if we have a menu of 10 things, we're very good at reacting, but we're not very good at creating the menu of 10 things, at proacting. But now AI can do that.
That's
right. It does it in a flash. So when I'm using it, and we have some software we can make available later on, but you ask, give me 10 of these things, which it just does because it can, and then you pick the 1 or 2 that you like.
Yeah, right. And that sort of leads me to my next question, which you did touch on, which is the fact that I was able to question my own brain.
Yes.
Because I've had, from 20 years ago, a beginning. Now, I don't practice it enough, and I should train it more. And I will, now that we're running this podcast, I will absolutely train my brain daily.
Okay. So can I just comment there, because it's a perfect moment for me to comment. This is what we would say, and it's perfectly reasonable, and I say it all the time because it's the way I was trained. I train my brain as if they're 2 separate things.
Yes.
There's a brain, and there's somehow a me separate to the brain that is training the brain.
Right.
And we now know there isn't.
No.
Now, that doesn't mean to say we can't still talk that way, and that because that's our culture and so on. But what it was is your brain was in that situation, realized that it was in that situation, and then connected with another part of your brain that had learnt that stuff or had that experience from the past and the knowledge and the algorithm and your previous experience in using it, connected that in and then brought it forward to use. But it was all done in your brain. It was not done by a separate I or a separate me or a guardian angel or something else. Even though in poetically and in our culture, we're perfectly free to use those kind of metaphors. But if we're talking neuroscience, as we are, then your brain did all that.
I like to think so. Yeah, some people, spiritual people, religious people might feel that the idea of me putting the light bulbs slightly in a different angle came from something more holy.
Sure.
I'm a bit more pedantic and pragmatic, and I think I used the BVS in that example.
There's nothing wrong with thinking. They're in a sense other methods you can use maybe before we had neuroscience, because it still gives you the idea of try something else.
Yes.
So whether you try a prayer or whether you try, look, where's my guardian angel?
Yep.
That trying something else. So that useful teachings
Yes.
to help us play the brain game.
That's right.
Now, the ones we're talking about are the ones in neuroscience,
Yep.
and that's fine, and we can have both.
And I think for the audience who don't know your background, particularly with your Catholicism,
Right.
I'm sure we're going to pull a little bit of that out over the next episodes as well, because there is a lot of overlap between the brain and...
Well, you can't be a neuroscientist or really even a philosopher, but you can't be a neuroscientist and study the history of thinking and so on without coming up against the Vatican.
Right.
And that, because it is the most successful human organization that's ever been invented.
Sure.
Even today, it's got 230,000 schools, 10,000 hospital healthcare situations. It's the largest healthcare organization in the world, and blah, 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 blah. It's diplomatic corps and all the other things. And it has its faults, of course, but it's a human organization. You can't really talk about, well, even science without, the Big Bang Theory, Catholic priest, Georges Lemaitre, Mendel's pods and the genetics. The Vatican Observatory up at Castel Gandolfo, just out of Rome, is one of the first observatories looking at the stars, not astrology, but astronomy.
Mm-hmm.
So it was perhaps the biggest science organization in the world.
Yeah, right.
Over the years.
Right.
Had a few bad moments with Galileo and that, but
that's true.
But on the whole, so it's not widely understood when you look at headlines. But if you look into it, it's an amazing organisation with lots of history, 2,000 years, and it's part of the reality of the evolution of human thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not a practicing Catholic. I'm not. But that doesn't mean I'm not interested in what's going on. And an interesting sidebar, as I mentioned before, the fundamental software that they put in the education system was the right-wrong system, the binary system, which leads to judgment. So we all become 10th Dan black belts in judgment. I'm right, you're wrong, let me tell you why. And not long ago it was burnt at the stake and all that other thing. But the previous Pope Francis has tried to change it, and he's tried to switch the church from judgment to what he calls discernment. Mm-hmm. And his quote is, life is not made up of black and white. It's the shades of grey that govern life, and it's discernment is being able to move among the nuances of grey. Now, if that actually took hold in the church and they were teaching that in the world through their 230,000 schools and so on, that would have a huge impact on the evolution of human thinking, but whether that stays or not, we'll have to see.
Well, maybe this podcast can assist.
Sure it will.
Yeah, how many Catholics are there in the world? How many millions?
1.2 billion-ish.
Billion? Okay, well, that's a call out to you. Like and subscribe.
Yes, like and subscribe. Or else you will go to purgatory.
That's right. Well, this kind of leads us into AI, which is your passion. If it's not going
again,
to Rome,
if you're interested in thinking and intelligence in any form at all, you cannot possibly be not. I use it all the time. It's great for doing thought experiments. You can use it for searching, sure, but it does. The latest versions do much more now. I use it for thought experiments, trying out ideas, getting different points of view, and so on. And so I can move ahead much faster than if I'm just by myself. I still have to direct it all. One still has to be the orchestra conductor, but you can have an orchestra as well. They're doing work for you. I'll give you an acute example. Just before Christmas, it all comes back to the prompt, and not just the prompt, but the series of prompts, the conversation you have with as you learn, and as you do, as one does with one's brain or within one's brain, the brain can react to its previous thought and so on. But I prompted Chat GPT-4, I think it was, please write a 1,000 word one-act play called Charles III in the style of Shakespeare. Uh-huh. The scenario is at Balmoral. Present are the King and Queen, the Princess Royal, the Waleses, and I think that was it. And the question was that recently York had been stripped of his title and everything else. And so the question was, should they do the same to the Sussexes?
Mm-hmm.
I pressed the button, and in 34 seconds,
Wow.
out came. I mean, and I could have, interacted and even improved it, but it was so a Shakespearean one-act play that it needed nothing. It was absolutely blew me away because why? Well, ChatGPT-4 has read everything that has ever been written on Shakespeare. Now, I've read my fair share of Shakespeare, but not everything.
No.
Plus every commentary, every movie, everything. So it has much more capability in terms of research. And then, of course, it knows all the contemporary stuff about what's been going on with the Yorks and the Sussexes and all the other things. So at its spell. So I sent it to a few people, including a rather well-known artistic director in the Shakespeare era, and he wrote back and said, well, I'm fucked. Because they were so shocked.
Yeah.
And this was in 34 seconds.
Yeah.
Now, that's just a little anecdote, but I use it with my clients. So I'm teaching my clients how to use it and how to do it. It can do X10 thinking. As I mentioned before, I'll have a client who'll have a problem or an idea they want to search. They'll prompt it into GPP and ask for a solution.
Yeah.
So I simply say, ask for 10 solutions and then choose the ones you like.
Yeah.
Now, even just that difference has a huge difference in the results.
And then when they get those 10 solutions and they choose one, they could do a GBB.
We could, and we'll get to that in another
episode
session.
in the future. Wow. This is going to be great. I think, we are definitely going to be opening up the brain. Yeah.
If we're going to be finishing up, can I finish up with a rather exciting quote?
Yes.
That I just got in the last few days. So I'm obsessed with it at the moment. So if I can get it off my chest, I'll be happy. So today's session is called Train.Brain.Daily. In fact, it's the series. So we start off with that. What we're saying is we have a brain, and if we train it, we get a better result than if we don't train it. And then the best way to train it, of course, is daily. So if you do train brain, that's been the mantra of my school of thinking that I've had for the last 40 years. So I saw a quote. I saw actually Jack Clark being interviewed on Rest is Politics, which is not a bad podcast.
And Jack Clark is a AI pioneer.
Co-founder of Anthropic.
Right.
Big one. He was a journalist at Bloomberg and keen on AI and writing all about it. And then he saw what was happening. This is a few years ago.
Yeah.
He's resigned from Bloomberg and he's British, moved to Silicon Valley and messed around and got going and was one of the co-founder of Anthropic now, it's headlines every day.
Yeah.
His insight in this interview, which just blew me away because it's obviously what I think, he said the biggest insight was they started off with having working groups that were working on different things because they didn't really know where we're going any more than Google did in the early days. You're just there and you're doing it because it's the ground floor. So one group were trying to figure out how you could design AI hands that would move. Another one was looking at sight, how we could improve AI doing sight. Another one working on text and so on, and so on. And he said we were investing in all those and sharing ideas and looking where it was going. And he said, but the insight came 2 years later when we realized the more we invested in training, the better the AI got.
Right.
Didn't matter what we were working on. It wasn't anything to do with what we were working on. It's a sheer, and OpenAI last year invested $19.2 billion in training. That's more than wages.
Yeah.
It's plus more than everything else put together, wages, marketing, buildings, everything. Their biggest investment was in training of the AI. For example, in my Shakespeare example, it was trained to read all of Shakespeare and have everything. So because it knew all of Shakespeare compared to me, it was able to produce that. But of course, the training is involved in everything. So I've always said that's the same applies to human intelligence.
Yeah.
Though if you multiply your training by 10 in a company, you can multiply your business by 10. And that was in the last page of my orange book that I gave you 20 years ago. I've never really found, and Jack Welch was very big on it, and that was a big part of GE's success. But when you look at all the Fortune 500 companies, they treat training as a cost, like Sunday school, like something you do on Sundays when we don't have anything else to do. But right now we've got to get on and do marketing and do all the other things. And so it's put aside. Now, the exception to that, of course, are the military.
Yeah.
Training is front up in the military. Why?
That's
because the bottom line is so severe.
Yeah, that's right.
In the arts, concert pianist, the orchestra we mentioned before, thousands of hours of training to be able to get, and in sport, the Olympic coaches, of course, we mentioned before, and even the Vatican, the most successful human organization, trains a priest for 8 years.
Wow.
They're influencers before they send them out. Huge investment. Yeah. So I've been trying to say, and another perhaps punchline is how many CEOs, Fortune 500 CEOs, have come from training? They come from sales, they come from finance, from operations, marketing, engineering. There may be, but I don't know of a single CEO, because training is so important. Therefore, you've got, you've worked your way up in the organization and you're qualified. No, it's a little thing over there on the side. If we've got time, we'll do a seminar on this or a memo on that. But in terms of daily brain training, in order to have the skills, customer service, that's not easy.
No.
And imagine the difference between, an organization that invested 10 times the amount of training in customer service than their competitor, and then the various other skills that are important. So to see Jack Clark, co-founder of Anthropic, come out and say it's the biggest insight they've had, and at the same time see OpenAI has just spent $19 billion, I'm going, yay.
Training's important. And that's the overlap between you and I, because that company in China that I ran.
It was a training organization.
It was indeed.
And that's why we connected, and here we still are. So daily brain training.
Fantastic. Well, this was episode 1 of Train.Brain.Daily.
Only 9 more to go.
9 more. 900 more, possibly.
Okay, good. Now we're talking.
Yeah.
There's X10.
Yeah. As long as our health is maintains that, we'll be going through. We'll have one every week.
Great.
Coming out.
Let's do.
And, of course, if someone finds this tantalizing, wants to learn more about the brain, CVS-to-BVS, maybe wants to get a head start on GBB even, how would they reach out to you?
Well, they can reach out to you and indeed to us at Train.Brain.Daily.com.
Sounds perfect.
And we'll have contact details there. And as this progresses, we'll have information or resources, free articles, free books, courses, consulting, whatever you want. So what's it? Train.Brain.Daily.com.
Thank you.